Okay, there we are. So I just want to welcome everybody to our learning circle, our June learning circle. I'm absolutely thrilled to see you all here. And like I said before, other people who have registered, that we had a very healthy body of registrations, and hopefully people will be coming in or going out or whatever. We're here. And I, of course, want to start by acknowledging that we are here on this continent called Australia. We are a national organization, so we are all located on different countries. I'm here on Gumbaynggirr country, so I will say Gidagay, and I will acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging, not only obviously of the Gumbaynggirr people, but of all the people on the country in which you are finding yourselves. If you would like to share in the chat where you're hailing from, share a word of local language or whatever, you are very welcome to. That's often a tradition that we kind of do in A squared E squared, being a national organization. And I just also want to particularly acknowledge the first Australians as the original environmental educators. We are, the Australian Association for Environmental Education, but environmental education has been happening on this continent for 60,000 years. And we have a lot to continue to learn from um, the first peoples of this land. And we hopefully striving to do that in our organization. So I just wanted to say that as we start. So, and thanks, lovely to see where everybody is coming in from. Um, so, this is one of, like I said, this is one of our series of learning circles that we're really working to get up and running. We're trying to offer one a month right now for our members in a variety of different uh, areas and disciplines and ideas. And I'm absolutely thrilled tonight to have my dear friend, Dr. Thili Wijesinghe, also known as Thili, to share her research and her passion with us. So Thili is actually, I will admit, a dear friend of mine as well. And I was going to say suffered, but I'll say we experienced our PhD work together. We got each other through without too much suffering. And just, I've always really enjoyed all my conversations. Thili's a deep thinker, a forward thinker. And that's what we're here tonight to talk about, speculative drama pedagogies, which is the subject of Thili's research. I'm just going to read the biography just to remind you all that Thili is currently an educational designer at James Cook University up in Cairns, with over 15 years experience in education, international relations, marketing, communication. And her PhD was in education from Southern Cross University. And she's going to share that tonight. And Thili also has a Master of Arts in International Relations from Colombo University in Sri Lanka, where she hails from, and a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism and Psychology and English Literature from India. So she is truly a global citizen with a very wide range of skills and understandings. And Thili is an educator first and foremost. So tonight is not going to be a lecture, it's going to be an interactive, fun event. So Thili, welcome, and really, really pleased that you're so generously sharing your thoughts with us tonight.
Thanks, Lisa. Oh, that was quite the bio. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the opportunity to, share what I've explored in my PhD with you all. And I'm actually, even though I completed my PhD last year, I've still been, thinking through these processes and really asking so many questions around these processes. So I'm sure tonight I'll really enjoy and appreciate if you do have a lot of questions once you get to know this process of speculative drama. And it's a collective and collaborative exploration. So that's why I want to make it as interactive as possible. So if you have, you have your computer screen, so you can take down um, notes while we do the activities, or you could, use a pen and a book, draw, write. It's up to you. I think it's that time of the day that you need to unwind and relax. So let's make this an opportunity to really do that while exploring how you could use drama or arts-based research to, explore about these issues like climate change, or explore environmental education in a more creative and innovative way. So I'll share my screen. I hope you can see that. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
On, yeah, there we go. Perfect.
All right. So before I actually get into the process, I'll just briefly share a bit of a story about this entire process and how it all began. Um, I used to, I used to be involved in drama during my school days, and as a practitioner, and I used to teach English literature in some of the schools in Sri Lanka as a secondary school teacher. And during that time, I developed this, really huge passion towards exploring um, futures. And I really wanted to see what would the world look like, in 2050. That was probably in the 2000s that I explored that. And then what will the world look like, in a um, all the futures related concepts. And I didn't have a name for it then, because I was thinking, well, would drama be a good avenue to explore this? Would, scripting be a good way to look at the future? Can we write down drama scripts and find solutions to problems that we might have in the future, or problems that we might have now? So having this in mind is when I started my PhD, and surprisingly, I had to do it through COVID, which made it even more difficult because I had to, as you know, theater or drama is so much a face-to-face aspects of arts-based research or arts-based methodologies, and I had to transform this face-to-face methodology into an online platform because I was working with young people from Sri Lanka and Australia, so two student cohorts of 14 to 17-year-olds. That was the biggest challenge, I'd say. And when I wanted to really envision how would my workshops look like would I have um, what would I do? Do I have a structure to all of this? Am I going to, involve the young people in doing this process? I had no answers. I had to really explore it. So my very first workshop with the cohorts were talking to them and asking them what their views were around this. I presented the concepts. I said, well, there's this drama method that you could use to look at the future. Would you like to explore this process together? So I have to mention here that I can't take full credit to, for designing this process because it's a very much collectively designed process with young people from Sri Lanka and Australia. And we collectively explored how each of these steps would contribute to someone really designing a subject, or designing a community program, or designing a learning activity in a classroom. So it's very much a generic sort of a process that can be adapted in different and varying contexts. So what we will do today is go through this process, and I'd invite you to share your thoughts around it, and it'll be very much a collaborative and collective experience. So that's a bit about the story. Um, and I know Lisa acknowledged country, but I'd also like to acknowledge traditional owners of the lands from across Australia and the world. I pay my respects to the elders past and present, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. All right, so this is our step-by-step guide for today. Um, there's um, uh, there's one, two, three, four, five, six processes that we have to go through. Um, and I will introduce the speculative drama concept towards the end, because then you'll have a better understanding of this process. I don't want to go into a lot of theories and, bring back terrible memories of my PhD. When you literally had to, break rest overnight to come up with all these concepts. But I'll provide a brief overview towards the end, and then it'll be your thoughts, your ideas, and would love to hear what you think of the process. So um, let's begin our learning circle. And I love this thought of the learning circle as well, Lisa, because I feel like um, you know, gone are the days when we sat at a seminar or a lecture and listened. As much as I enjoyed, I think everyone brings some sort of, um, you know, preconceived experience or knowledge that really contributes in a rich manner to these discussions. And this is exactly what I did in my PhD as well. My researchers, the young people, were called co-researchers, and they worked with me in designing this. All right. So if you have um, a pen or a paper, or it can be your screen as well, or if you just want to close your eyes and listen to this, um, what we're going to do is this is one of the very first narratives that I wrote, inspired by Margaret Atwood's work. Um, and this was something that I presented to my young co-researchers while we did workshops. And all I wanted was, I always asked them, well, how do you feel about this? That's the only question. So there wasn't climate change or environmental education, nothing was brought in. It was just this narrative that was presented. So I'd like you to have a look at this. And if you want to write it in the chat of how you feel, just you can do it, or you can unmute and express your thoughts as well. So I'll read it and you can read it with me, or you can take down notes, or however you want to work with it. It's 10 past 8 a.m. I switched on myself and took my food pill, turned on my mobile location to move to my office. It usually only takes 30 seconds, but strangely enough, it took me 1 minute today. I was never employed by anyone, so I started my own business, a creative thinking workspace. I have more than 20 clients with me. The Bitcoin money I collect every day is stored in my memory. I still have something called a cash note, which my great, great, great grandparents gave me. Looking back, life had been so different then. The old photographs show some beautiful cities with rivers flowing, trees every step of the way, and different looking humans. I was designed by my parents, born into this world to be a creative thinker with many abilities. But my great great grandparents used to tell me that no one ever designed them. They were all born to the world with unique abilities. Friends of my age have designed abilities too. I just worked to find bitcoins for my water and food. Water had been free several decades ago, but not anymore. Water is produced, H2O is produced, and we need to pay for it. I pay for my oxygen too. It costs $200 per liter. I shall start work now by entering today's date, 20th January 2100. I'd like you to um, just share in one or two sentences how you feel about it, or you could unmute and just speak up, whatever you want to do. Thanks, Vicky. It really challenges my thinking and thought processes. Yep. And we've sad for the losses. Mhm. Yeah, the fragility of things, Jane. Yeah. Lisa?
I got really sad too. Like I had this wave of grief, kind of like, oh
Hmm.
no, we failed,
Yep.
where are the trees kind of thing.
Yeah. Thanks. Marilyn. Yep. Restricted. Yep. Anyone else wants to share? Yep. Generates so many questions. Yeah. Water is not free. Mm. All right. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Hold on to those thoughts because it's a process. So you have to take that thought with you as we go through this process. And I've received similar sort of comments while I was doing um, the workshop with the young co-researchers. Um, except, however, there were some comments that came through the workshops where they said, oh, this is definitely going to happen. We need to take action now. So the climate activists who were involved in some of these workshops were really looking at it in a very optimistic manner because they thought they were taking action for it now so that this never happens. And so you could really see that coming through. I did the workshops with almost 14 co-researchers, and almost 6 of them were very optimistic and positive about it. That was a bit of data to share with you. Um, all right, let's move on to the next step. So this is I think this is the entry point into this speculative drama process. And I have to mention this, you don't have to use the same narrative if you're conducting this process or in your classrooms or in your community. You can use something that's really appropriate for your audience. But this is just what I used in my speculative drama process because my PhD research was basically focused on climate change. And I had to, come up with something like this based on the literature that I had already read. So this can be changed, but it's an entry point as time travel into this process. All right. So keeping that thought in mind, you now get a chance, an opportunity to get on this time travel machine that's next to this narrative. Um, it's AI generated. Now, I didn't have this sort of image when I was doing my PhD because ChatGPT or Adobe Firefly, all the artificial intelligence tools weren't available. So I literally had to get the students to draw the time machine themselves, and they collectively designed a time machine, which I cannot share due to data privacy issues. But this is something that AI generated. So I think on a positive note, I'm not a fan of artificial intelligence, I'd say, because I feel like it narrows down my creativity. But I feel like this is also a good opportunity just to delve into that future a little bit and just understand, oh, is this exactly what a time machine looks like? And just to explore that concept. So imagine that this is a time machine, and now you really get to go to 2100. So you read a narrative before, but now you're getting into this time machine and you're traveling to 2100. Um, it takes only a couple of minutes because technology is advanced and you get the opportunity to go there. Um, you're in 2100 now. Um, you get out of the time machine. What do you see? Write down your thoughts in 1 or 2 sentences again, and you could also share it in the chat. I'll give you about 4 to 5 minutes to think through this. And the instruction is, what do you see? It's not what do you want to see?
That was going to be my question. Yeah, and it's based on the descriptive piece that we've just read through. Yeah.
I wouldn't give you any instructions around it.
No. Okay.
No,
So we don't have to.
you're free
Okay.
to think through. Yeah.
Yep.
Would anyone like to share if you've already written? I mean, you can unmute and read it. That'll be lovely to hear. Oh, thanks, Sue. Yep.
I'll give mine because I'm sick and
Sure.
tired of typing things.
Yeah, Viv, go for it. Yeah.
Look, I just have visions of me sitting working in some sort of bubble because obviously you can't breathe the air outside. I'd have visions of what the earth used to be like, sort of, because basically if you looked out your window, you're not going to see much in terms of, you know, just buildings and things, but not really anything living out there if there's no oxygen. And I'd be also feeling very isolated and lonely because obviously you're working through screens and that.
Yep.
And just sort of wonder where I would actually be able to meet people, what sort of, it would very much cut down on any community type things if you're paying for the water and the oxygen.
Yep.
yeah, I just felt really desolated and isolated in a room with just screens, perhaps with what the earth used to look like, because there was no view out of the window. And also, if I was meeting people, if there was a central place to actually meet, presumably to procreate, people still have to meet. I was thinking that all the people, what would they look like? If they're being designer, people would have an idea of what a perfect human would look like. What would that look like in terms of, would everybody be very, there'd be no imperfections. Everyone would look very the same depending on what that community's ideal was of what you should look like. There wouldn't be much variation. Anyway, those were my thoughts. Very depressing.
That's great. I love that, Viv. Not that it's depressing, but I love how your thoughts have taken your mind into these different areas to explore about it. So I love that your creative expression of it truly reflects what that 2100 world will look like. And I'm looking at the chat as well. A lot of gray, not very positive futures. And yeah, Jane, you have a more positive sort of an outlook of it, which is great. And this is the beauty of this process, because once you start doing it, you get all sorts of responses. Some are really positive about it, and some, it's the way you see the current world that you sort of speculate for the future. And the narrative might have affected your thinking, but it also, the current scenarios that we experience, or if you're seeing a lot of climate change happening, and that's the sort of vision that enables us to speculate through those spectrums. So I really love the responses that have come through, and thanks so much for all those beautifully written phrases, and it just blows my mind just to see how you've imaginary time machine that has taken you to 2100 to let you explore that space. What sort of a world do we see? um, so because of time, I'm not going into detail of each of these comments, but I can see that we have a sort of a some positive outlooks and some negative outlooks of what the 2100 world will look like. So hold on to those thoughts, because let's go on to our third process. I'll share my screen. All right. Can you also see that? Oh, all right. So you're now in 2100 still. You didn't come back to Earth yet. But you get an opportunity to look at Earth. So that's why this is titled as Through the Looking Glass. You get a little magnifying glass while you're in this time machine in 2100 to look back at Earth and try to understand, well, what's your perspective now? Do you think the years will lead to what's happening in 2100? Or do you think, we're doing a lot of action, we are taking a lot of action, so 2100 wouldn't even exist. It might be different. It might be a place filled with trees because people are planting trees now. What does it look like? So it's a perspective taking and system thinking process where you're going into that 2100 and looking back at Earth currently, 2024, and trying to see, what is it like? How do you feel about it? What does Earth look like now? I'll give you about 3 minutes to write down your thoughts. And as we've said before, if you're comfortable sharing it by unmuting, just do it, because I know it's this time of the day you don't want to type and write down or take down notes. So feel free to share your thoughts.
I was just thinking, sometimes it's from what perspective you're actually thinking yourself at the moment. And lately I've been reading things about, like, have we really failed? Are we just being Pollyannas? At the moment, that's where I am. Like, I don't want to think that way because I'm an environmental educator, but I just feel as though I have to go through that time of, are we a failed species? Have we really failed? Is this where it's going to end up? We're a blip in the landscape compared to the dinosaurs who lived for 60 million years, yeah. So like, what are we, 200,000, 80,000 modern humans. So it's, yeah.
I love that thought, Marilyn. And that's just, bridging that history with that future and actually seeing where is this, where are we situated in this landscape of, we talk about climate change, we talk about that change is happening at a rapid pace. But I love the concept that you just shared where you feel like, well, even if you look back at Earth being in 2100, you don't really, you don't know where we are at. That's difficult
right.
to say. So
yes.
Yep, I love that perspective.
Hopefully I'll get out of this sad stage, but that's just where I feel at the moment.
No, it's a great thought.
Yeah.
If I come from the opposite thing, when I'm like, oh, we've, from in 2100, I was like, we figured it out. We reached the tipping point. Everybody, we started. So then I was like looking back through Earth thinking it looks rather diseased and there's like these big gouges out of it and looks like kind of, like a dog that has fleas where like a bunch of its fur has been kind of whatever, compared to 2100 where we're like just planted and it's all treed again and it looks like Jurassic Park again. I don't know.
Yep.
So that was like the opposite, but it was obviously very optimistic.
Exactly. No, I think that's great that you brought that in, Lisa, because I have to share a bit about that too. Because this step in this process is specifically designed for perspectives taking. So it's about, you're in 2100, but now you look back at Earth, imagining that you're not currently on Earth, but in another, probably Earth, but in 2100 in another time zone. And what do you see? Like, I've seen in some of your responses, there's hope, there's positive elements coming through, there's optimism, because when you look back at what we discussed before about that doom and gloom in 2100, as opposed to looking back at Earth, well, aren't we lucky? We've got all these things happening. There's activism, there's regeneration happening, there's decarbonization happening. So there's a lot of things going on. So when you look back, I think if you had a bit of, that sadness, sorrow that's embedded into your thoughts just a couple of minutes ago, that would change a little bit, because we are thankful that we are still in 2024 with at least a bit of time to make some changes. So this step was co-designed by the co-researchers because they said, well, there's this downhill that we've been exploring things about, but there needs to be like a climax or, a place where we really look at the positive side of it, being thankful for what we have now and being able to change at least in some way. So thank you for the responses. I've seen some really good responses coming through. So this is the third step of the process. And what it does is it encourages you to really look at your perspective as opposed to what you previously heard. So you read the narrative and then you traveled in the time machine to the future. And then in 2100, you looked back at Earth. So it's that process that you're traveling through now. And again, as I said before, this is specifically on climate change, but you could tweak this to suit your subjects, your community programs. It's very much a free-flowing process. So feel free to change it, feel free to follow the steps, but come up with innovative and creative ideas for it. All right, let's move on to our next process, next step, which is, all right, so giving voice to what has life. So you'll see a very weird looking image as well on screen. And you also might be wondering, what does this mean? Giving voice to what has life. So in my PhD, I don't want to go into theory a lot, but I adopted a post-human theory, which I'm not going into detail at all because I'm just going to expand and I'll just talk for the whole hour about it. But what it really brought to my attention was that what if we give voice to everything that has life? Now, we know that trees have life. We know that animals have life. We know that everything around us has some form of life because it always keeps changing. There's some sort of change happening. And as soon as I say this, you might not really, understand what I'm talking about, but as we go through the process, you'll get to see it. So basically what this step is giving a voice to things that don't really have a voice. So let's say you have a mobile phone next to you, or a pen next to you, or a light next to you. What would it have to say about, because it's climate change that I'm talking about, what would it have to say about climate change? Can you think through your thoughts and share like what it would be? I'm not going into a lot of detail here because I might, cut down on your creativity. So pick or choose an object that's around you. It can be a book, it can be a plant, it can be anything that's around you, basically, and give it a bit of a voice. I'm not going to specifically say whether it's a human voice or not, but give it a voice and express how it feels.
Sorry, Thili, I was interrupted by a child.
No problem, Vicky.
Can it be any like an inanimate object as well that isn't living?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. I love that, Jane. That's great, Robin. I think that's a really good perspective to take. Viv, you don't have to write down. You can share if you like.
Were we sharing now, are we?
Yeah, you can go for it.
I was just thinking, if I was a huon pine in Tasmania and I had survived for 3,000 years, how sad I would be that I'm now dying because of the uncontrolled firestorms that are coming through because of climate change, because of the warming of the climate.
Yep.
And, you know, what I have seen over that time, yet in a blink of an eye, I'm now, you know, dying. I'm sorry I'm being so morbid.
No, I
can't
love
help
that.
it.
No, it's just the process, and it's not just you. It's just like in my workshops, I had my co-researchers. You know, it was like 50-50 because they were very optimistic, some of them, and some of them were like all, and that's how they feel. And this process is, as you could see, it encourages us to think differently, and that's why it's a very generic but useful process to go through, because rarely do we go to these places, rarely do we think through these lenses to understand what really needs to be changed. And with the point that you brought out, like I mean, apologizing for thinking through that, you don't have to, because it's just the process, the flow, and it's that dramatic component coming in where it encourages your imagination and speculation to really think through these lenses. So whatever you're coming up with, it can be something very positive, it can be something very negative or pessimistic or a doom and gloom future. I think what's important is that you work your way around these thought processes and really understand, well, if I was to do this in my setting, in a community or a tertiary education setting or school or kindergarten or wherever it is, um, how would I encourage my students to think through these lenses and take action? Because that's important. I've done these similar processes with industry professionals, and it's interesting to see what sort of thoughts come out of it. So it's not the same thought that comes out every time. And I have a really interesting quote for this towards the end of my presentation, which I will share with you all. Every time it's something different, and it's the current experience you're in, the current book you're reading, the current movie you would have watched, it all affects. So my PhD explored that we are not living on our own. We're all, all co-creating and evolving all the time. So everything that are around us are encouraging us to think like this. And it might be a day where you spent your time out in nature and you explored a lot of nature together with your friends, or you did something in nature. Your vision of the future might be very different to what you have now. So it differs, it changes all the time. And this is only a platform to share those thoughts and ideas, which is so important, because towards the end, you'll understand how this process really helps us to come up with solutions or to come up with processes to challenge climate change and to really introduce this into education systems. How do we create innovative spaces for environmental education? So thank you for your responses. I can see some really interesting ones. Jackie, I love this, the visual arts journal talks, and you bought me 6 months ago because someone told you to, and you used me for a few workshops. Yep, that's great. I love that. And um, I love that it's not just around climate change, because this is the thing. Now, when I was doing this workshop with my students, there were some instances where none of the climate change thoughts or ideas came out from them. They were just sharing about, oh, I felt really happy today because I won this award. That's it. And it's interesting to see how your life's dynamics sort of entangle with these components or issues that we are sort of broadly looking at. So I'll explain that a bit later, but let's go on to the next process. So hold on to your thoughts that you just gave voice to. because next is the future outlook. Now, let's say you have that same object, whatever objects that you chose to give voice to before, and you are talking to this object after 100 years. What would it have to say? Robin? Oh, sorry, I thought you.
Is it the same object we're talking about?
Same object. Yeah.
My object was my phone, and my phone had been yelling at me to pick it up and like telling me how important it was. And in 100 years, it doesn't exist. So it's like old fashioned and like nobody knows what it is, and it feels really bad. And I'm like,
it's in the museum.
Yeah.
If one exists. Yep. I love that, Lisa. Vicky, yeah, your house plant may not exist.
I think I should have chosen something that was inanimate and not alive.
Oh no.
But I did have a secondary one. I was starting with my mobile phone before. I'm having some mum distractions today. So
no worries.
But mine was very similar to Lisa. It was yelling at me, and then I was thinking like it would just be obsolete. Like they probably wouldn't exist. It would probably, I don't know, maybe it would be embedded into our brains by then.
Definitely. That will be so disturbing. But at the rate technology is moving, I don't know where it'll end up, to be honest.
Me
Jackie,
either, and I watched too many sci-fi shows with my husband, so I have lots of horrible, vivid scenarios going in my mind.
That was the fun part of my PhD, I think, reading and watching sci-fi, because it formed a part of my literature review. So that was interesting. Jackie, I love that.
I'm having a bit of trouble with this process. I'm stuck with mountains and trees, and somehow I see it as they will still exist. I won't.
Yep.
I find it very hard to vision a human future.
Yes.
Because I'm so embedded in, I suppose, the natural environment as being a sort of like testimony to evolutionary, billions of years, millions of years of evolutionary process. So we're just a blip. And no matter how hard I try to vision a human future, I can't, because I see whatever humans do. I mean, they could obliterate so much of the living planet. But the planet itself will continue in some shape or form. And if the best case scenario was that people make real changes regarding the natural environment in that time, then it may look so much more cared for and clad in vegetation with the tall timbers still existing that are here now. The mountains maybe won't look quite the same, although in terms of what they're clad in, because of climate change, but they will still exist. Yeah, that's all I can contribute. I'm sorry.
That's great, Suzanne. I think you're bringing a whole lot of creative expression to this, because you see it from a very different angle. And I had similar young co-researchers having similar perspectives as well. So you're on the same line with them. And I love that, the visions or the views that we get in this space, in this small circle that we have, is very different to one another. It's not the same vision we have of the future. So I really appreciate your thought, and
Thank you.
really seeing that humans are, negligible in this whole story. We have no right to think of the future, because the future has been happening from the past for a very long time. So we're just here to explore this, and just to see how well we fit into this whole story. How do we become characters in this grand narrative? And are we even allowed to, come up with concepts like climate change? Are we allowed to do that? Or are we allowed to be part of this earth? Like, what is it like? So that's the exploration that's going on. So I really appreciate your thoughts there.
Okay.
Amazing.
You'll be happy to know that I've tried to be more optimistic.
That's great, Will.
And the kelp forests and the seaweeds are working.
That's great.
And dragging the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So the human pines are going to survive. They haven't been wiped out by the cataclysmic bushfires.
Well, it's not bushfires, it's clear felling as well, darling.
Yes, I realise that. But
I think the humans are far greater destroyers in terms of what's happened, the amount of loss and species and just landscape have been lost through human destruction. And if that can be changed, modified, then there's still much life there to work with.
Yep, I agree. But I love how your perspectives have changed since the time we started to now, like the journey it has gone through with the several processes that we've gone through. All right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts in the chat too. But I'll move on to the next step. And this is actually, this is not an activity per se, but what this really did was bring in all those steps that you just went through, from going to 2100, reading the narrative, looking back at Earth from 2100, giving voice to any objects that are around you, and then taking that object to 2100 to have a conversation. What do you see? It's not a narrative, or it's not an activity. It's just an opportunity to share your thoughts. If you look at it through an environmental education point of view, where do you think, sorry, where do you think all this is positioned? Do you think we have much space or room to really be creative in a communication methods in terms of passing on this education to our students about the future? Do you think we are taking enough action as educators or community champions to encourage everyone else to think through these lenses and take some sort of action for the future? What is your thought?
Hi, Jackie here. I find this, like, sometimes the universe, like, stuff just comes up at the same time, and I'll be doing something over here and I'll start dabbling in something, and then I'll listen to a podcast, and I feel like the universe is like telling everybody the same message at the same time. Anyway, I just want to start with that because I've started doing this thing in my environmental education lessons with kids where I say my welcome to country, and then I talk about future generations, and do our future generations have a say in what we're doing and how we're living now? And you know, talk to the kids, I guess, get them to think about that future generation. And I've been pulling up a chair and putting the chair to the side of the workshop and saying, this is our chair for our future generation person, here's our future person. And then we work through the workshop and we refer back to the future person and how's the future person feeling about, you know, so in regards to things like climate change and problems that we've got in the world and our bushfire and our, you know, all sorts of effects of human interaction with our world. And it's been powerful. It's been really powerful. And I've got to go and say goodnight to my kids. And so I just jumped on now straight away to sort of say that, yes, I am using this in my own little kind of way. And it's just incredible because kids and even adults, we struggle to put ourselves into our grandchild's, you know, I don't have any grandchildren, but we struggle to put ourselves into our grandchild's perspective. And so I think to even just have that thought of ask that question, what about the future person? What does the future person think about this? Is such a great perspective shift and really good to chuck into anything you're doing with kids.
I love that, Jackie. I think that's such a fabulous idea. And you just sort of bringing that thought into this space is amazing because I feel like, you know, it synchronizes with what I want to pass on as a message here as well, because it, looking through their eyes is so important, and bringing that chair and really getting them to imagine and speculate as to what this generation might have to say is something so powerful, and I love it.
And just one more thing I'll say on that is if you're thinking of using that, please do. And if the kids can't say anything because they don't know what the future person's words would be, get them to do a face, because that's really powerful too.
Yes, that's true. And I just have to mention on that, when I wanted my co-researchers to actually do the presentation of how they felt of like how an object would speak, some of them wrote their narratives in coding language, and some of them actually sang. So it was very different modes of expressing how they were feeling. So yeah, that just brought back a bit of memories for me as well, Jackie. So thanks for sharing that. Anyone else? What do you think?
I love that principle, Jackie. It's been with me for some years. The seventh generation American Indian idea of sustainability, that we have to consider the generations to come in terms of how we live now. And the future person in the chair is very much in sync with that idea of sustainability, of not what we want now or what we have now, but what would we want our not ancestors, those going ahead of us, what would we want them to experience of life on this planet in our community now? Don't push it out too far. You know, that ties in so well with the 7 generation principle of the Red American, the American Indian. I'm trying to remember which group it is, but I did investigate it some 20 years ago. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. Yes, Jane.
Thili, you asked if we thought that we're doing enough. And I think probably we're all here as some kind of environmental educator. And we probably all think when people in general are not doing enough. And I think one of the things that is common, certainly from when we read the chat here to all of us, is that we are thinking about these things all the time, but people like climate change scientists are also thinking, and so we deal with this level of kind of climate anxiety and grief all the time.
Yeah.
But that's exacerbated, but because when we aren't talking amongst ourselves. We are talking to people who say that, you know, there's denialism, there's, you know, faith that humans will just fix it, that there'll be some kind of techno fix. So yeah, I guess it depends on who you're talking to, but I suspect that most of us here think we're not doing enough. Each of us individually are trying really hard, but as a larger group, we probably despair.
Yeah, I really value that thought, Jane. And the only sort of the process is such that this encourages us to explore it together, collectively, in whatever forum we are in, and just to say, what are the next steps? What do we do? So it's an exploration. Well, if we are doing the right thing, how do we continue to do it, and how do we spread that to our generations to come? So I thank you for that thought, Viv.
Oh, I was just here in the ACT, we're doing a lot on country as a teacher. In other words, that you don't talk about country as an it. It is an entity. And if it is an entity, like, you don't talk about your grandmother as it. So therefore you care for your grandmother. So I just think that if we had a duty really as environmental educators is to try and cultivate that caring for the environment, for country, because if people have that relationship, then we will get our environment, our country with a capital C here in Australia, will be better looked after, and we won't be trashing it as we are. And the other thing that I've been thinking about as you've been talking is a lot of teachers I know hold back with younger children talking about climate change, because as you can see from me, it can be very depressing. So, you know, at what stage can we, and how do we, like I as a education ranger at Botanic Gardens, I deal with very young children, and then, you know, up to year 12. So at what stage do you think these concepts, like this sort of scenario with such a, you know, bleakness, we don't want all our children to be depressed?
Yeah. Lisa?
Really, time, it's 20 till, you asked me to tell you the time is.
Yes, thank you.
I also just wanted to, I'm just going to jump in there because I also do want to acknowledge that Jane that's your area, isn't it, Jane? I know your work, early childhood and climate education. So not putting you on the spot, Jane, but I just wanted to acknowledge that we do have an academic here that has research in that area. And if you do care to share a couple sentences with us, then please do. And if you don't, we might get you back for a different learning circle, Jane. But I just wanted to acknowledge that. I do know your work, and I know you do good work in that area.
Thanks, Lisa. Viv, I think it was, look, I don't have the answers. I do work with young children, and I think one of the things that when I work with young children, I feel that they already know, you know, very young children, we can't underestimate what young children know. And look, I think if we asked young children what they think should happen, they would tell us in no uncertain terms, and we could learn a great deal. And I guess that's very much a part of my work, is that it's saying just that, you know, just listen to the children and do what they say, because they know, as do Indigenous people, you know. They have known and, you know, knew prior, you know, it's just a small group of people that seem to not know, really. Yeah.
Thanks, Jane.
Or choose not to. Yeah.
That's really, that's so true. And from my experience, I've conducted a similar workshop with young children. And the way I approached is I've given them the opportunities to think through these processes and really understand how they felt about it. So I've not really proposed the concept of climate change to them, but I just talked about the environment, the things around us. How would your, what do you do for the environment and things like that? So having very generic questions and helping them to navigate through those areas would help sometimes. But Robin, you have some thoughts as well. I think you're on mute. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. A few things I've been doing. One is nature journaling, and that I found really beneficial.
That's great. Yeah.
And I think instead, as you said before, I don't really talk to students about climate change or young people, but a change in the climate is a good, how's the climate changed over time, and just connecting them to country and to the environment through mindfulness. And we've used the practice of Dadiri. We've contacted Miriam Rose, and she's allowed us to use that concept of really deep listening and being intentional when we go out into nature. And sort of trying to think and feel about nature. I think Amy Carter Mackenzie, is doing some great work down in the Northern Rivers and talking to older students, maybe teenagers, about their experience with climate change and the floods. So I think when there's an opportunity that arises, such as a bushfire or a flood, or the weather we've had in Queensland last summer, just to harness those opportunities to have a conversation. And then I suppose allowing that conversation to be expressed in a journal. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a picture. It could be a poem. It could be, I get students to use QR codes. So they've got a great opportunity to represent what they want to sort of talk about. They could write a poem, they could make a song, they could do an artistic piece. And I think then all those things create a conversation.
That's great. Thanks, Robin. And Amy was my PhD supervisor. So I've always been a fan of her work, and still following and really appreciating the work that she's doing too. But I'll just quickly go through these last couple of slides that I have for today. I don't have much. The process is mostly done, but this is the last part of the process, which is a collective inquiry and cooperative learning, which is what we just did. We explore together. So this entire process drills down to a space where we express our thoughts, we express our ideas, and you could then lead it to a collective action plan or a collective journal entry that you want to write. But in my case, for my PhD thesis, we did a collective stage play. I wrote a stage play with the co-researchers, and it'll, like, in a very positive news, it'll be staged this year in Sri Lanka and Australia, because I'm working with some young people on bringing that to life. So that's a part of the plan. But this is a bit about what speculative drama is. You've gone through the process now, so you might be able to, understand it a little bit better, imagining and exploring possible futures. But I'm not sure if you felt this way, but it encourages creative thinking and critical analysis by having you step into imagined scenarios and highlight the potential outcomes of environmental issues that we are facing. So this is, in a broader sense, a process that I created during my PhD as a methodology. And this is the sort of definition that was created as well. So what are the key aspects of it? Imagination and future thinking is key. Role playing and empathy. We didn't have a lot of time to really go into the script writing, but in the actual workshop, the co-researchers wrote little narratives and scripts in each of these processes, and the stage play was created as a part of all these narratives and stage play scripts that they wrote during these workshops. Critical analysis and reflection. Once the stage play was written, we looked at the data together and analyzed it together as a co-analysis, and also the collaborative learning opportunity. So I learned from the co-researchers and we all learned from each other. So if today was such an opportunity for you to learn from each other, I think that's the success of the process lies in that. It draws on a couple of speculative propositions, and it's about the being, knowing, time and space, if you could see through the processes, because you traveled to the future, you came back to Earth, looked through living objects, gave it a voice. So it's about being in that moment, knowing what things are around you, moving in time, and exploring these spaces. As I said before, I don't want to go into the details of this, but I just thought I'll add this little bit so that you understand that this process is developed based on a theoretical methodology. And this was the play that was created. You could read my thesis through the QR code that's here, but I'll also share the link in the chat. But the selfish mass, all these images were created by the co-researchers, and the character names, the scripts, everything it was all a part of their creations. So I worked with them to generate these. All right, so we have a couple of minutes for your thoughts. I'll stop my share after this quote. This is one of my very favorite quotes from Joe Norris, who's a stalwart in play building. It has nothing to do with climate change or environmental education, but this entire speculative drama process was developed based on this. And if you could read the first couple of sentences, it says, the Research Act, this could be a teaching act as well, is considered a leap of faith as one enters into the unknown to discover something new, or to uncover what they knew but did not know what they knew it, that they knew it. So you would have felt the same, that you figured out something that you knew but you didn't really know through the process. And it certainly was a pleasure to share this process with you and to get your insights on it. Thank you so much for being here today, but open for thoughts and comments. Sue, I saw you had raised your hand before, but sorry, I just had to go through the slides and I just wanted more time for some questions.
I'm not sure if Sue was going to mention anything, but I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's been such an interesting learning circle, and I've never done or been led through an activity like that before, and it did really challenge my mind and my perceptions, and listening to other people's thoughts and views as well has been really, really invaluable. So just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. That's great to hear. Thanks so much for being here.
And Thili, I'd just like to add to that what Vicky just said. I'm off to read your thesis because I love the I've put this in the chat, but the arts I think are this is what I was saying before. We environmental educators are, it's almost overwhelming in terms of what we feel we can do. And I think the arts offer so much in terms of the possibilities for action and changing hearts and minds. And so this is just so great to have this in our toolbox. So thank you.
Jane.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm
Thanks,
glad I
Jane.
came
Really
along.
appreciate it.
I just want to add to that my exact same sentiments as Jane in terms of actually causing change. We underestimate and do not use the arts, drama, or other sort of areas of arts, because I think that reaches a much wider and connects a much wider group. Whereas, a scientist talking about stuff, I come from a science background, is only it's not reaching enough people and not quick enough. But I think we should, and I've thought for a long time, use the arts, use drama, use dance, use drawing, nature journaling, all these sorts of things, because it's a much wider audience. And when it comes down to it, it's not all the facts and figures and tipping points and all these sorts of things, it's how you feel is what's going to cause you to actually do action, kind of thing. And I think the arts speak to that, speak to people about how they feel.
Well,
so
Viv,
thank you.
Yeah, Viv and Nell, as two members of the national exec, putting you on notice because I think that as a national exec, the special thing about A Squared E Squared is we're cross-sectoral, like, schools, business, community, whatever, but we're also cross-pedagogical, so science has always been kind of privileged. And I'm just absolutely, which is why I was so happy that Thili agreed to do this tonight, because I'm just convinced that arts-based environmental education is so important. And so I would like to put together a national working group in which we can, foreground it for everybody, because, and there's lots of different types of art. So anyways, just putting that out there. And Nell's like, oh.
I think Thili should chat to Peter and have a special edition in the A Squared E Squared on arts based I suppose
AJ.
Yeah, AAEE, arts based environmentalism or action. But I think I was just thinking about the arts and the head, heart and hands, because it really does involve the hands and the heart and putting the head together. I think that's sort of lovely. And as we do things like nature journaling or art, and we are looking at plants, we do see that rebirth and that hope, because things are evolving in nature all the time. So I think that's a wonderful way to connect young people. And I really enjoyed, actually, last week there was the International Nature Journaling Week, and they went through the whole sort of from birth to decomposition, and it really took people on a journey. So I think that was a fantastic sort of analogy to take people on. But thank you. I've been Googling, I've been stalking all the people here as you've been talking. But yeah, I think it's been wonderful, and to listen and hear everyone's responses. So thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Lovely to have you.
I'd like to jump in as well. Hopefully you can hear me all right, Thili. I work at the Cairns and Far North Environment Centre, and I just wanted to let you know about an event that's happening in October at the Cairns Botanic Gardens. Some local filmmakers are putting on a short film screening of a film about climate activism and First Nations justice and resistance. And CAFNEC, the org that I work for, is putting on a workshop kind of to prime the audience before the screening. And I wanted to thank you for sharing your process. As a not-for-profit, it's really, we're all, like, honestly just winging it a lot of the time in our workshops, and resources like this are hard to come by. And I I can see that it's validating because I can see elements of what we already do in our workshops in this process, kind of the visioning work that we do. But I am grateful that you allowed us to talk about kind of what we actually see the future as now, rather than kind of the idealistic thing that we often do in our visioning exercises. And I think it's a bit scary to do that in a workshop setting. And so I'm grateful that you gave us the space to do that, because it can get dark, but it's also really important for identifying solutions. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bronwyn. That's great to hear. And activities like that, it happens everywhere, and a lot of good is happening in terms of climate change. So that's a very positive outlook for it. And I guess what this process does is really capture those and bring that to everyone's attention. So your comment there, Bronwyn, really validated that too. So thank you.
And Bronwyn, if your organization needs some more support or help or resources, A squared, E squared, we are trying to become that network that supports each group, as small or large as it is. Maybe we don't have the resources as the national network, but we might be able to hook you up with someone. I mean, if you just even look at the group of people in this room, like huge amount of knowledge and networks and backgrounds, and so yeah, Bronwyn, I'll just put my email address in the chat, and you can always get a hold of me via or any of the national exec via the website.
Thank you so much for that. This is my first learning circle that I've come to, and it was our director, Lucy, that told me about it in light of the climate justice short film that we're putting on. So yeah, it's really cool to see this work happening all over the country, and I'm keen to come along to more learning circles.
Wonderful. Welcome. We're nearly at time, Thili. Did you want to summarize or?
Well, no, I think I just loved listening to everyone's thoughts as well, Lisa, and just getting everyone's perspective, because I've run about 10 to 12 workshops with this process so far, and every workshop has been so different. So I think I'm really enjoying the different perspectives that are coming through it. I've run the workshop with the same cohort twice as well in last year. And you could see how their perspectives were different too each time. So I guess we're also in that co-making with everything that's around us, as I mentioned before. And it's that various influences that we have from around us that really affects our thoughts and speculation. So I hope this process, we didn't go into detail of each of the sections, but I hope that brief understanding of the process really brought some thoughts and creative ideas for you to use in your work.
So thank you. That's wonderful. It's such important work. And I'm just really, really grateful to you, Thili, for sharing this so generously with us. And yeah, I'm really, really appreciative. And like I said, we'll hopefully, the recording will be put up on our website for our members. And I'm sure Thili would be happy to, I don't know if you want to pop your email in the chat before we go, Thili, or you can contact by me. And we hope that, yeah, we'll see you at the next learning circle. We have one planned for August, which is Monty Nixon talking to us about country. What am I saying, Viv? Learning. I'm saying the wrong thing. No, now you're on mute. Okay, I'm just
country as a teacher.
Country as a teacher. Thank you. I was like, what I was going to say, country as climate. I'm like, no, climate. This is a country as a teacher. That's August 7th, I believe. It'll be in our bulletin. If you're not on A Squared E Squared's mailing list, just pop me a little message to that chat, that email, and I'll add you to our mailing list. And we are also going to be hopefully running a learning circle every month. We don't have one scheduled for July yet. if you have somebody that you think you would like to share, like Thili did today, contact me, because you know, and any topic around environmental education is really welcome. So if there's somebody that inspires you, or you yourself would like to give a learning circle, please contact me. And I'd like to build that culture up where everybody knows that once a month we have these really fun, and any time of the, like, you know, we're trying in the evening and the afternoons, and, you know, like Jane mentioned before, you know, Western Australia, we have to take into account the time difference and everything. But anyways, we'll just keep going, because that's what environmental educators do. We teach, and more importantly, we learn. So let's keep up that great work. It's really lovely to see everybody. Thanks again, Thili. Really, really appreciate that. So,
Thanks, Lisa.
Lisa, there was one other thing that I mentioned that I thought about when we were thinking of the future of, you know, children, people not thinking of the future of our children, was the present. I put it in the chat, the duty of care bill that's presently going through our Senate, promoted by the independent Senator Pocock. And that's about that governments have a duty of care to future generations, which is an interesting concept. I don't think it'll get passed by a present parliament, but, you know, it makes you think, you know, what you're doing today is going to affect, you know, and should our government, you know, take responsibility for what they are doing to future generations. So I commend Senator Pocock is encouraging everyone to write to their local, if they support this bill, to write to their local MPs.
We should get Senator Pocock and the local MPs doing some speculative drama. And with that, we will say good night. Thanks, everybody. Again, and we'll see you hopefully soon. I'm going to stop the recording.
See you, everyone.